Hey Summoners, make sure that you've subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button. That way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Welcome back to the Mobalytics 9.13 update and Q&A video. I'm your challenger coach Adam Moriarty-Isles, here to take you through all the changes and questions you had. As per usual, I'd like to make the disclaimer that we only update the normal list as of right now, as the high-ELO one wouldn't really have a big enough data set to make an update worthwhile at this point in time. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into the update. Starting off in top lane, we have Garen, Urgot, Yorick, Mordekaiser, and Tahm Kench in S tier. The only change to S tier is dropping Jax back down to A tier. Despite his good matchup into Mordekaiser, his priority did not increase because top TK is still a thing and Illaoi came back into the meta, who is a good matchup into him. Speaking of Illaoi, the Tentacle Maiden, she's back in A tier after her changes from last patch. You've probably noticed Illaoi jump up and down on our tier list quite frequently lately, and that's because her matchups are super polarizing. If ranged champions like Karma, Kayle, or Victor are high up on the list, then her win rate is gonna suck. But if melee champions start to rise up in both solo lanes and tanks are in the jungle, then she's gonna smash some faces in the current meta. Some quick tips for any future Illaoi abusers, mains, is that Conqueror is a really strong keystone on her, probably better than Kleptomancy, in that her easiest matchups can be Renekton, Jax, Aurelia, or really any tank is free. Poor Karma drops down to B tier after being good for like a patch. This happened because Riot reverted one of her key buffs, which was the duration of the move speed on her E. She took a big hit in all roles after that was taken away from her, including top lane. Obviously she got overbuffed and the nerf was definitely deserved. It's just my only confusion comes from the lack of nerfs on a similarly overpowered enchanter who starts with the letters L and U. This champion has a bunch of skins, has an annoying laugh, has been competitively viable as a support and a mid laner. It just seems strange to me that Karma is relegated to being a B tier champion while Lulu is allowed to jump in and out of the meta over the years as a top tier pick. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Probably thought I was talking about Lux the whole time. On a more serious note, the only other two changes to the list will be chopping Maokai down to the graveyard due to most tank tops being terrible in the meta at the moment, with the return of Illaoi especially, and Kennen going to A tier because he beats most melee champions, including Illaoi and Renekton, who are very popular at the moment. Moving on to the jungle list, in S tier we have Vi, Amumu, Volibear, Master Yi, Jax, and Nunu. Elise, you'll notice, dropped back down to A tier despite being an amazing jungler at the highest level of play due to how her late game power dips quite a bit, keeping Spider-Woman just barely out of S tier. Master Yeezus, though, has risen to S tier once again with one of the highest play rates and a very strong win rate. This is due mostly to how well he does versus the popular tank junglers like Sejuani, as well as doing very well versus the melee heavy solo laners like Aurelia. He's not really built any differently this time around, outside of the fact that versus range comps, some people started to take Halo Blades. The other interesting thing that helps him out in the current meta is the popularity of enchanters across multiple different roles. Not a lot of champions or people are going to be able to outcarry a fed Master Yi being shielded by Lux, Janna, Morgana, Taric, Sona, god there's so many of them, or even a Zillion speeding him up and giving him a revive. Jax also moved to S tier, and I normally give him a detailed rundown, but it'd pretty much just be copy and pasting the Master Yi section of the script and swapping in Jax's name, as they moved up for pretty much the same reasons. Before we move on from the jungle list, I would like to mention a couple of things briefly. The first is that I believe Qiyana is best suited to be a jungler or a mid laner, but is just far too weak to be put on the tier list at the moment. The other is that J4, despite having S tier stats, is not an S tier champion because he got them from a bug where his EQ combo had an extra 50 range. In the mid lane tier list, in S tier we have Lux, Malzahar, Vel'Koz, Mordekaiser, Ahri, and Diana? Wait, am I reading that right? Diana? Who wrote this script? Whatever, I'm a professional, I'll roll with it. So many of you may be confused as to how Diana could go from off the list to S tier from some quality of life changes that happened last patch. While I could sit here and give you some sort of explanation attempting to decipher whatever wizardry caused this to happen, but I'll be completely honest, I don't know why her win rate went up by such an absurd margin, and I'd be lying if I tried to pretend like I did. It's actually so bizarre that even Riot made a statement saying they don't know why she's doing so well, to the point where they think she has some kind of bug, kind of like the J4 one that happened at the beginning of the patch, and they're actively trying to find it. If you main Diana, now's the time to climb. For some of the other S tier changes, we have Katarina falling down to A tier from S tier due to getting pushed out and destroyed by Diana, while Karma moved down to B tier due to her nerfs. Mordekaiser went up from A tier to S tier due to his overwhelming strength in the current meta. It seems like it doesn't matter if he isn't strong against range comps, as he's still able to beat ranged champions in lane due to his E and his ultimate negating the space they have to kite him. He is simply brute forcing his way to the top of the mid lane list, ignoring his intended weaknesses almost like he's too strong or something. For now, if you main melee mid laners, I highly recommend banning him. The only other changes to the list is Swain taking Kassadin's spot in B tier. This is due to how well Swain does versus the melee heavy compositions of this meta, while Kassadin is a champion who just does too poorly in the laning phase to impact a game consistently at this time. Also, if you know why Diana is doing so well, let me know in the comment section below. I'm genuinely interested. Now over to bot lane. In S tier we have Jinx, Caitlyn, and Sivir. We were able to correctly predict that Caitlyn would rise to S tier and that Sivir would hang on to S tier even after her nerfs. What we didn't get right though was that the Taric Sona combo would take such a drastic hit, making it drop from A to B tier, which is a worrying trend for NA's chances at taking games at Worlds. This duo, along with the Tahm Kench variant, has been destroying both pro play and solo queue due to its ease of execution, safety, and late game prowess. This forced Riot to nerf Sona's AP ratios enough to knock her down an entire tier. In my opinion, it's still a pretty good combo, it's just no longer so strong that you can be 0-4 and still carry no matter what after 25 minutes. With no other changes to the list, my off-meta recommendation will be the Vel'Koz Yuumi combo that was mentioned in the comment section below for our tier list video a while back. I've since tried out this combo a couple of times and it's incredibly strong. The lane priority and poke damage are insane, while stacking your ultimates on top of each other can easily 2v3 a gank or 2v5 a teamfight if it's in a choke point, so give it a shot. And lastly, we have the support tier list with Nami, Lux, and Janna in S tier. For our S tier changes, we have Sona who dropped out of S tier to A tier due to the nerfs intended for bot lane carry Sona impacting support as well. We also have Nami moving up from A tier to S tier. With Sona out of the way, she is now the premier healing poke support. She has great synergy with the S tier picks Caitlyn and Jinx, while also being good with Draven in A tier. Due to her aggressive laning style, she can easily help these champions bully lane, while also providing them with utility later on in the game. For all of you aspiring Nami players, my advice to help you not miss your bubble so much in lane is to use your E on yourself or your AD. Wait for the slow to proc, then bubble. Makes it 10 times easier and you won't see your AD missing ping you as much. Nautilus went down to A tier because of how reliably he is forced to snowball right now, or else he'll just end up getting outscaled by the Enchanter S tier roster. Don't get me wrong, he's still very good, probably A+, it's just that if he doesn't close out the game quickly, the 0-5 Lux who died to every hook in lane will outplay him during teamfight phase with her scaling W. Now, onto the Q&A portion, where our first question comes from Shadow on YouTube, who asks, why is Rengar top removed from the low-ELO list, but remains in the high-ELO one? I know you said he has bad matchups, but matchups and matchup knowledge should matter more at a higher level of play, right? So if he's removed from the low-ELO tier list because of matchups, I don't really understand why he stayed in the high-ELO one, where mistakes matter much more. You're right on thinking that matchup strength can matter more at a higher level of play because people will be able to punish these smaller advantages more. The difference in this particular case though comes from the difference in burden of knowledge. I'll give you an example of this with the Twisted Fate vs Fizz matchup, where at lower levels of play, Fizz dominates it because the Twisted Fate is required to know more about the game to survive Fizz's all-in. But once you get a higher level of wave control knowledge, the Twisted Fate starts to win the matchup again. It's the same for a lot of Rengar matchups in top lane. He's required to know a higher threshold about the game for him to start turning around some of his worst matchups. Rengar top isn't like some Sion or Maokai pick who can be down 100 CS and still be useful and engage teamfights and win. Rengar top's got a smash lane, smash game, and so he needs to know how to snowball lane phase to make sure that happens, or he's just useless. Our next question also comes from YouTube, and it's from Bio667, who asks, why is Volibear considered S tier jungle over some of the other A tier picks? His early mid-game ganks are so difficult to pull off compared to some of the A tier choices, and his late game presence never feels that much greater than, say, Sejuani or Hecarim. Am I missing something? I'm pretty sure you're missing something. So you're correct in thinking his late game is worse than Sejuani and Hecarim, but where he excels the most compared to those champions is definitely the early mid-game skirmishes. He's quite literally a monster at lower levels of play when it comes to skirmishing due to his execute, passive healing everyone forgets about, and the deceptive amount of AoE damage this ult brings makes it so that at lower levels of play, it's a dream come true for Volibear because these type of uncoordinated fights happen all the time and the carries struggle to even kite him, so he just literally runs over the early mid game. As for feeling like his early ganks are weak, they shouldn't feel like that, especially because his E can be used to interrupt a lot of dashes or jumps. So try one of his best tactics, which is just camping one lane as hard as possible if they lose flash. The reason this is particularly good as Volibear is because he doesn't need a lot of setup for his ganks, he just needs his Q up. So try punishing Flash's laners a lot harder than what you're currently doing if you want to find success on the Thunderbear. Next up, we have a question from Discord from Kavilo who asks, is Cassiopeia good now? Nope. Now on to the next question. Kidding, of course. Actually, she's seen a bit more play lately at higher levels, but I still wouldn't personally consider her an amazing pick. Cassiopeia struggles in the early game at the moment and has no way to impact side lanes in a bot-centric meta. She also needs a front line to be impactful and loses to long-range champions like Lux or Assassins if not played perfectly, while also requiring a team to peel for her and let her scale. She's just so conditional. Now, if her buffs go through on the PBE, the Roa ones, or the Rally ones, or her personal ones, she could make a comeback in the meta as she might be able to solo impact fights on 1 or 2 items, but until then, I would shelf her unless you're some kind of snake lady god. Our fourth question or comment is from Twitter where Kalian Lord says Syndra should be S tier after the buff's laughing crying face. I'm pretty sure this person is just memeing, but I'll use this topic to talk about Syndra a bit. Though buffing her mana is nice, it's not a strong buff overall for her as she isn't really considered a DPS type control mage whose main job is to spam spells to get DPS out in fights. She's more of a burst / pick mage. This means the extra mana can feel nice during the mid game, but it can be pretty pointless most of the time. I understand why Riot did this kind of buff though, and it's because she is a tricky champion to balance. In the past, whenever they gave her buffs to her main spells like damage on Q for example, she ends up bullying lane way too hard. In the right hands, she just snowballs the entire game with her insane solo kill and gank setup, followed by roaming around the map as if she owned the place, which she did. If you make her laning too weak though, she loses a lot of her identity in the early game while not having the godlike late game of champions like Victor, Cassiopeia, and Anivia to back up the fact that her laning just isn't that strong. That's why Riot has such a hard time balancing her and needs to be cautious when buffing her. Our last question comes from Small Oriana on Instagram who asks, any opinions on Lissandra in gold to Plat ELO? Lissandra used to be a perfect autofill choice for mid lane due to how safe and consistent she used to be. But ever since the QCD and Aftershock nerfs came through, I wouldn't recommend her for any elo. This is because she lost what made her good, which was her lane priority and ability to shove in any champion while maintaining safety and good gank assist. Now she can't really do that anymore and would get destroyed by any champion who outranges her, like Lux. She does still have the gank assist, but she just can't shove people in anymore. If you really like her though, she still can be used as a counterpick into certain champions, mostly high mobility melee champs like Fizz, Akali, or Aurelia for example, as she can still bully them and keep them under control during the teamfight phase. 100% avoid picking her into long range mages though, as she will just get murdered in lane. Thanks for watching our tier list update and Q&A video for patch 9.13. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below or go to our Discord server in the link provided where you can ping me in our Discord discussion channel. Don't forget to try out Mobalytics today at mobalytics.gg and I'll see you summoners out on the Rift.